Hi, welcome everybody. Peace be with you. This is the Yahuwah World Peace, Truth and Love radio show. This show is about getting rid of all Satanism, racism, and child abuse by speaking about world current events in the news uncensored, alongside the Bible in English and Almighty Father Yahuwah's Torah in ancient Hebrew. We will begin by looking at some news clips and also some various other video clips with some pictures, and then we will continue with Yahweh commentary afterward. Thank you for watching. Respect.
Devastating, disastrous, and deadly.
Oh my God.
From tornadoes to typhoons. From windstorms to ice storms. 2015 has been a busy year for extreme weather events, but when it comes to breaking records, it was all about the heat.
It was already declared the warmest year on record in November, and we're talking about 135 years of monitoring global temperatures. Stick a thermometer in the planet in 2015, it said, well done.
Indeed, the planet has been pretty hot. According to several global meteorological agencies, 6 of the first 8 months this year ranked the warmest on record. In May, roads in India literally melted as temperatures approached 50 degrees Celsius. Hundreds of people died as a result of the searing heat. Canada was also hit hard by hot weather, especially in the west. Scorching temperatures and low rainfalls led to drought. The dry conditions took a toll on crops and producers in Alberta, prompting officials to declare a state of agricultural disaster. It also led to a dramatic jump in wildfires. In Saskatchewan, fires were so intense the military was called in to help. And in BC, one community was completely devastated. 30 homes in Rock Creek were destroyed. The Canadian Red Cross and the provincial government have pledged to help. And for some of those who lost their homes, they say despite the devastation, they're determined to rebuild. As for what's behind the extreme heat, some scientists say it's a strong El Nino.
This El Nino is a monster, and I guarantee it's going to deliver.
Others point to something different. The World Meteorological Organization suggests global warming is to blame. This fall, the UN agency warned inaction on climate change will mean warmer temperatures every year.
The time is now to act. We don't have any time to waste.
But what exactly should the world do? A question global leaders were determined to answer at this year's critical climate talks in Paris. In the past, negotiations failed, but at this summit, one in which Canada played an active role, an agreement was reached. Nearly 200 countries have agreed to curb global warming to well below 2 degrees Celsius.
This agreement represents the best chance we've had to save the one planet that we've got.
As for what the Paris Pact will mean for Canada and the country's energy sector, the Prime Minister will meet with the premiers in the coming months to discuss how best to move forward. Melanie Nagy, CTV News, Vancouver.
Energy expects to spend, and the low loonie is causing grief at the grocery store. A new report today says prices for almost everything are going up, especially if it's imported. CTV's Atlantic Bureau Chief Todd Battis with what to expect at the checkout.
Take a stroll down any aisle, through any supermarket. You'll notice the same thing. Higher prices on nearly every shelf.
Who likes higher food prices? I mean, I don't understand, really. I just have to manage the money, try to save the best that I can.
Overall, prices are expected to rise 4%, costing a family of 4 an extra $350 next year for a food bill totaling $8,600.
Canada is the only country in the world where you find the food inflation rate to be above 2.5%. And we're sitting at 4.1%. So anywhere around the world, food is actually much, much more affordable.
Blame the weakened loonie. The dollar simply doesn't buy as much, especially in the U.S., where we import 80% of our fresh fruit and vegetables. Though rain returning to California could produce a bumper crop and ease prices.
When food prices go up, it's felt across the board, of course, but perhaps nowhere more so than places like this. Food banks here at Feed Nova Scotia They satisfy the hunger of 44,000 people every year.
It's the busy Christmas season. Still, they're looking toward the new year. Anxious costs will increase and force more people to rely on food banks, especially for items that become out of reach.
If people are being forced to buy less expensive foods, less nutritious foods, because that's all they can afford, it's going to have a significant impact on people's health.
Beef, up 30% the past couple of years, will continue to rise. Pork, a bargain in comparison, will increase too. In fact, most items will push grocery bills to new highs. News that's hard to stomach. Todd Batta, CTV News, Halifax.
Okay. Good evening. We begin tonight with a breath of fresh air for our planet. That, at least, is the hope following today's historic agreement in Paris. After 2 weeks of hard bargaining, almost 200 countries have signed on to the fight against climate change. The goal, put the brakes on global warming by cutting and eventually eliminating greenhouse gas pollution. Canada and other participants are hailing the deal as a crucial first step. But as CTV's Janet Dirks reports, not everyone is cheering.
The Paris Agreement is adopted.
And with the pounding of the gavel, the landmark climate accord was unanimously approved. This after 2 weeks of negotiations at a UN conference hosted by France on a plan to lower greenhouse gas emissions and curb global warming. It's not a perfect agreement, said the U.S. president, but
this agreement represents the best chance we've had to save the one planet that we've got. So I believe this moment can be a turning point for the world.
From Paris, Canada's environment minister tweeted, "History is made for our children," an echo of what Prime Minister Justin Trudeau told delegates when the summit began.
We have an opportunity to make history in Paris, an agreement to transition to the low-carbon economy.
What has been agreed to? A commitment to keep the rise in global warming to well below 2 degrees Celsius, but aiming for 1.5 degrees. Developed nations will have no mandated emissions targets. Each country will set their own targets to be reviewed every 5 years, and billions of dollars will go to developing countries to help them move to cleaner energy. Canada already promised $2.6 billion on that front last month. Lacking are penalties for countries that do not meet their self-imposed targets. Some critics call the agreement toothless.
If there are no obliged and binding measures which are accompanying it, then I'm afraid it's an empty box.
As for a national strategy, the Prime Minister has said he will meet with Canada's premiers in the next 90 days. 5 were in Paris, including Alberta's Rachel Notley. Last month, she announced a climate change plan for the province, including a $3 billion carbon tax.
So when we got elected, quite frankly, it was time to act, and everybody knew it.
Certainly, jobs are an issue in Alberta at a time when tens of thousands have lost work in the energy sector because of the sinking price of oil. In a statement tonight, the Canadian Association of Petroleum Producers says any action on climate change must be done globally, and it vows to do its part through innovation and technology. Sandy?
CTV's Janet Dirks in Calgary tonight. Janet, thank you. Good evening. We begin tonight with an issue that whether it's you managing the family budget or the government trying to balance the books, it affects all of us. The struggle to make ends meet. Just in time for holiday shopping, Stats Canada says household debt is at a record high, and a new Nanos poll shows confidence is way down. The poll shows Canadians are feeling worse off about their personal finances, less confident about the Canadian economy, and less secure about their jobs. Today, the finance minister revised the government's economic outlook as well. CTV's Richard Madden explains.
In his first public speech as finance minister, Bill Morneau tried to sound optimistic.
As someone I know, who now sits 2 seats away from me in the House of Commons, would say, sunny ways.
But there are storms in the economic forecast. Oil prices plunged even further today to $35 a barrel before stabilizing. It pushed the loonie below 73 cents US, the lowest in 9 years.
And going forward, it's very likely that global economic conditions will remain unfavorable and that subdued commodity prices will persist.
And as Canada's economy declines, StatsCan reports consumer debt loads hit a new record high. Including mortgages, Canadians now owe almost $1.64 for every dollar they earn. Many seduced by low interest rates, buying homes beyond their means.
It tells me we just can't rely on the consumer to really lead the way and drive the economy in the next couple of years. We're going to have to find another source of growth.
Last week, Morneau tightened mortgage rules to curb debt loads, and the government will likely spend more than their promised $10 billion to stimulate the economy, but Morneau promised to avoid runaway deficits.
We're not, and we won't be, embarking on a spending spree.
And there's another troubling economic indicator. The latest weekly confidence index shows 35% of Canadians believe the economy is getting weaker. Only 22% think it's improving.
It's like a double impact. People are worried about the state of the economy, and they stop spending money, which makes it even worse for Canadians.
Today, Morneau announced he's setting up a new advisory council, comprised of experts here in Canada and abroad, on ways to boost economic growth as he prepares for his first budget. Lisa.
All right, Richard Madden in Ottawa. Thanks, Richard. So Canadians are spending way more money than they actually have, but so's the government.
A few weeks ago, we told you about MCR1, a gene that makes bacteria resistant to antibiotics. It had been found in China, and now it's been detected here in Canada. It was found in 3 samples, 1 from an Ottawa hospital patient and 2 in Ontario ground beef. Joining us to discuss this is microbiologist and director of the Michael G. DeGroote Institute for Infectious Disease Research at McMaster University, Jerry Wright. Good morning. Good to see you.
Good morning. Nice to see you as well.
Tell me a little bit about what, this MCR1 in terms of, because we've talked about germs, things that are resistant to antibiotics in the past, but this seems to be the top of the heap.
Yeah, so MCR1 gives resistance to what we call our last-ditch antibiotic called colistin. And colistin is a drug that actually we found about 50 years ago and then put on the shelf because it was just simply too toxic to use. And as bacteria become more and more resistant to all our other antibiotics that we have out there, about 5 or 10 years ago, infectious disease specialists started to use colistin a lot more because we simply had run out of any more good drugs. And so what MCR1 has done is actually provided resistance to that last ditch antibiotic that we have, this old drug that we only are using because we're desperate right now. And now that we have resistance to that floating around, we're in pretty bad shape because there's no new drugs coming to market anytime soon.
Well, so the problem is twofold, really. I mean, on the one hand, this MCR1 is resistant to this wonderful antibiotic that is the strongest available, but in time, the concern would be that it wouldn't be effective at all?
Well, that's it, and that's actually it's actually not a wonderful antibiotic. It's actually a horrible antibiotic. It's terrible to take. It's very toxic. And normally we wouldn't give it to people except that we're in such desperate situations in many cases. And yeah, because the gene now is, and I've used this term before, is like the genie is out of the bottle. Once the gene is able to move between bacterial species, which is what was discovered in China, and now as we see in Canada and other places around the world, this gene is now circulating amongst these germs that we are only controlling right now with colistin, and so we are now approaching a situation where we could be facing some germs that we just simply can't treat with the available antibiotics.
I mentioned in the intro that one patient in an Ottawa hospital, and also then the 2 cases in ground beef. Would it be a far-reaching assumption to say that it's probably more widespread than that?
Yeah, I think so. I think this is what this study tells us, and certainly it's what the retrospective studies around the world are showing is that this gene has been in low-level circulation around the planet for a while now, and normally we wouldn't be too worried about that, except that, as I said, colistin is this sort of last-ditch drug in many cases, and because the gene is now in these bacterial populations, as we increase colistin use more and more because of the rise of drug resistance to other classes of antibiotics, penicillins, cephalosporins, and things like that, then we want to use colistin more, and because this gene is there, we are facing a situation where it might not work anymore.
And if I had this MCR1, would I be sick necessarily?
No. So that's the thing about these. They're about these little genes, these packages of DNA that confer these things. Unless you're actually being treated for an infection, you could carry these genes and not even know and not know about it, because the bacteria in your gut might just have them. And that seems to be what the case is. And this patient in Ottawa had this organism, and they were sick for other reasons, but we found it, and then that gene was in it.
Okay, Jerry Wright, we'll leave it there for now, but thank you very much for your expertise.
No problem. My pleasure.
Now the problem.
The so-called Army of Islam, one of the most powerful rebel groups in Syria, and until yesterday, prominently commanded by this man, Zaran al-Lush. No longer. He and several other senior officers were taken out in a precision airstrike. The Syrian army happily took responsibility, though it's just as likely these were Russian bombs. This was a patriotic operation against the abomination of terrorism, said a Syrian spokesman. More than that, it was a clear attempt to decapitate the group's leadership ahead of UN peace talks.
This man Al-Lush was one of the hardest line, the most ugliest figures in Syria today. I don't think he'll be much missed.
The Army of Islam fights against both the Assad regime and ISIS. That's what makes them such pivotal players. That and their numbers. They have a lot of hardware and a lot of fighters close to the center of Damascus.
If his Army of Islam falls apart, then it's a major development. If things continue as before, then it really isn't that important.
The head of ISIS surfaced today in a new audio recording, said to be the elusive Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, back to taunt the U.S. and its allies into a ground war. They do not dare to come, he said, because their hearts are full of fear. The UN today announced a target date of January 25th for those Syrian peace talks, negotiations that have already been put in jeopardy, Sandy, because of events on the ground there.
All right, Paul, thank you for this.
It was supposed to be a year of degrading and destroying ISIS. The U.S.-led coalition dropping thousands of bombs on the terrorist group, which had fortified itself across huge swaths of land in Syria and Iraq. Despite the onslaught, ISIS captured more towns and cities.
It's going to take time to dislodge these terrorists, especially from urban areas. But our coalition is on the offensive. ISIL is on the defensive, and ISIL is going to lose.
Still, worldwide, ISIS continued to grow in notoriety and popularity. Aggressive and brutal social media campaigns glorified its reign of barbaric terror. A caliphate which supports rape, murder, and slavery of minorities. And its propaganda continued to work, attracting thousands from countries around the world to join its cause, including hundreds from Canada.
I have been saying it for a long time that there is a recruitment which is going on in this country by physical people who are walking on the streets of Canada.
On the ground, Iraqi soldiers, Kurdish fighters, and Sunni militia are locked in a deadly seesaw battle with ISIS. Towards the final months of 2015, the skies over Syria became even more crowded. Along with American, French, British, and Canadian jets, Russia also took aim at the terrorists, but also at rebel groups in Syria. Actions Vladimir Putin stated publicly were in direct support of Syrian leader Bashar al-Assad.
We think it is an enormous mistake to refuse to cooperate with the Syrian government and its armed forces.
There have been minor but significant victories. The spot has been lit. The man known as Jihadi John, a British citizen who murdered 3 Americans and many others on videos posted online, became the face of ISIS. He was targeted and killed in an airstrike.
This guy was a human animal, and killing him is probably making the world a little bit better place.
It's estimated that tens of thousands of ISIS fighters and supporters have been killed, and the U.S. president says they're pinned down.
In fact, since this summer, ISIL has not had a single successful major offensive operation on the ground in either Syria or Iraq.
Still, replacements continue to arrive in the region. ISIS is even establishing cells in half a dozen other countries, while terror groups like Boko Haram in Nigeria and others across the Middle East are pledging allegiance to the black flag. Peter Ackman, CTV News, Toronto.
He couldn't wait to shoot a black man. He couldn't wait to shoot an unarmed black man.
Once a respected Chicago police officer, Jason Van Dyke, is mobbed and jeered on the courthouse steps.
Mr. Van Dyke,
Inside, he pleaded not guilty to murder and misconduct in the shooting death of a 17-year-old black teenager, Laquan McDonald, last year. His lawyer says he'll prove he's innocent.
You know, he wants his story to get out so that people don't see him as his cold-blooded killer.
The killing, captured on police dashboard video, shows the teenager walking down the street armed with a knife. Surrounded by police, Van Dyke is the only officer to fire his gun 16 times. The video, released only last month, sparked days of protests and demands that the mayor step down.
The first step in that journey is my step, and I'm sorry.
Apologies not enough after another 2 black people were fatally shot by Chicago police this weekend.
Why you got to shoot first and ask questions later?
Family and friends grieving after police admitted they shot and killed Betty Jones, a mother of 5, by accident.
My mama just opened the door and they killed my mama.
Jones was killed along with her upstairs neighbor, 19-year-old college student Quintonio Legrier, who struggled with mental health issues. His father is suing the city.
That's my son. Get him some assistance, and no one did anything.
Outside the mayor's home tonight, more calls for him to resign, cutting his vacation short to return to a tent city, and a police department already under investigation over race and the use of deadly force. Joy Malvin, CTV News, Washington.
The escalating Cold War between Iran and Saudi Arabia disrupted the global oil market, at least temporarily. Prices spiked, then dropped back below $37 today. The reason for the volatility? Nearly half the world's oil reserves are in the Middle East, with both Saudi Arabia and Iran controlling hundreds of billions of barrels. CTV's chief financial commentator, Patty Levitt-Reid, is in the newsroom tonight. Patty, this kind of volatility in the Middle East in the old days would have sent oil prices soaring for a lot longer than they were today. Why?
Absolutely. Initially, we did see oil hit higher levels and then pull back very quickly, primarily because there is such a glut out there, and neither Iran nor Saudi want to lose market share, and nor do they want to go to war over it in all likelihood, because what could be accomplished? Think back to earlier last year. We saw oil prices falling and everyone was cheering at the pump, and then we started to see investment pull back, especially in Alberta, and then we started to see job losses, and then people got very concerned. Along with falling oil prices, the Canadian dollar also went down, and now many of us going to the grocery store are going to be paying a lot more. Food inflation is very real for a lot of people, so you see this knock-on effect. 81% of our fruits and vegetables are imported. A lower dollar is not helping the situation. So you've got a lot of things going on here today. You've got lower oil prices, but also taking the Canadian dollar along with it.
Yeah, overall, it was a really brutal first trading day of the new year. Take a look at this. The slide was triggered in China, but at one point today, the Dow was down almost 470 points, the TSX almost 270 points. Both regained ground by the time the markets closed. But, Patty, it is never good to start the new year this way with the markets down and the dollar down and oil down. What should people be watching for?
You know, it's not a technical term, but it was yucky any way you want to look at it. I think people are going to accept that there's a certain amount of volatility. Global growth is stubbornly slow. I think in terms of their portfolios, this is a really good time to say, what do I have in cash? You want to be diversified. You want bonds in your portfolio. And if you're going to hold stocks, you really should have a 5 to 10 year time horizon. Buy quality names, companies that pay a dividend, and you hold them for the long term. But this is a good time to rebalance.
Okay, Patty, thanks for this, and Happy New Year to you.
To you too.
Great to have you in the newsroom. Tonight, radiating international outrage as North Korea brags about testing a hydrogen bomb. The most secretive state makes the most dangerous claim.
I condemn it unequivocally.
Criticism, skepticism, and fears of an escalating arms race. Good evening. A tremor in North Korea triggered a shockwave that circled the globe today over fears the rogue nation run by an unpredictable pariah is a step closer to getting the world's most dangerous weapon. Pyongyang says it successfully tested a hydrogen bomb. It's a claim shot down by a lot of experts, but what we do know is that there was a massive explosion underground in the same area nuclear tests were conducted in the past. State media released this photo of leader Kim Jong-un apparently authorizing the blast in a handwritten note last month. Joy Melvin has more on the impact.
The ground in China shook. South Korea thought it was an earthquake. Then came North Korea's breathless announcement. It had taken its nuclear might to the next level, testing a hydrogen bomb. Bursting with nationalistic pride, this man says, the U.S. is waiting to invade us. Having an H-bomb is the right thing to do. Calling an emergency meeting, the UN Security Council quickly condemned North Korea's action as a gross violation of international law.
I demand the DPRK cease any further nuclear activities.
Unlike its previous ballistic testing, it set off 3 atomic bombs already. China, North Korea's only ally, was given no warning. Beijing is furious but stops short of punishing the regime. South Korea calls it a provocation. Japan, too, is outraged, sending military planes to test the air for radiation. So was it one of the most destructive bombs on Earth? Washington doubts it, says the bang would have been bigger.
The initial analysis is not consistent with the claims the regime has made of a successful hydrogen bomb test.
Kim Jong-un, just days from his 33rd birthday, is still a young leader. He's flexing his military muscle, trying to attract the world's attention.
I don't think it's a game changer, but it's just another sign that they are very serious about building a nuclear weapons arsenal.
No one doubts Kim will keep trying with his finger on a growing arsenal. He wants in the nuclear club.
We are not going to accept North Korea as a nuclear armed state.
So what to do about North Korea? China's frustrated, disarmament talks have stalled. The UN is pushing for deeper sanctions, though it's unlikely any of this will discourage Kim Jong-un, Lisa.
All right, Joy Melvin in Washington. Thank you, Joy. Canada joined the international condemnation against North Korea today. Foreign Affairs Minister Stéphane Dion issued a statement saying, in part, North Korea's continued violations of its international obligations pose a grave threat to international peace and security. Now here's a bit of a history lesson. The world's first atomic bombs were dropped in 1945 by the United States on Hiroshima, then Nagasaki, during the Second World War. More than 200,000 people were killed, and the harmful effects of the radiation felt for generations. The U.S. was also the first to test the far more powerful hydrogen bomb in 1952. Since then, Russia, China, Britain, and France have also developed H-bombs. India, Israel, North Korea, and Pakistan are also believed to have A-bombs in their nuclear arsenal. On our website...
Hi, welcome everybody. This is the Yahuwah World Peace, Truth, and Love radio show. This show is about ending all racism, Satanism, and child abuse by speaking about current events in the news uncensored, and speaking about the Bible in English and Almighty Father Yahuwah's Torah in ancient Hebrew. I'm the DJ Yeshayahu Abi Yahuwah, the Hebrew Israelite Nazarite Nati dreadlock dark-skinned melanin man who speaks prophecy in the name of Almighty Father Yahuwah. So you could see in life, the Almighty Father Yahuwah with the 12 tribes Israel people always taught us to live with love, peace, respect, honor the women and children, and to always live with righteousness, helping your neighbors. And when you look in society, it doesn't matter where you live in the world if you're a 12 tribe Israelite. And Israelites can be black or white because we're disciples of the Messiah, Emmanuel Yahweh. And the Messiah, he came to the world to speak to the Israelites and to the Gentiles to show us about love and mercy of the Almighty Father Yahuwah with peace, love, and miracles, and healing and prophecy. So this is what Israelites and disciples are supposed to be doing all throughout the world. And no matter where you live, you're supposed to be living as an Israelite first and not being involved with politics or any of these fake religions such as Christianity, Judaism, or Islam, or Freemasonry, and politics, and so on. With Hollywood entertainment, all of that is Satanism and pedophilia. And that is why we've been showing the articles in the news video to start the show, because you could see in society that everything is downtrodden and it causes people to feel sad and upset. There's a lot of superbugs in society that are diseases, and you can see that's a big problem. Food prices are up, and this all causes people to have psychological problems. And when it affects teenagers, you could see that they can end up with cardiovascular and other problems. Then you can see the foods are too salty, which is also another biological health risk. And at the same time, the BPA from plastics, that's been causing behavioral problems as well. Then you can see if people do not get enough sunlight or vitamin D, it can lead to multiple sclerosis, which is bad. And then you could see the government is causing these problems because the police had a child abuse scandal, which happened. And at the same time, when there are oil spills and different spills, there are metals in the water. At the same time, if you eat organic fruits, that could help ward off oppression, which is good. You could see the Pope is doing blasphemy by saying that politics is effective when that's blasphemous. You could see there's asthma health risks. In school, they're promoting homosexuality, which is blasphemy. At the same time, Ebola is still going on in the world. You could see it costs a lot of money to take care of children. You could see that the Prime Minister can't stop the dollar from going down. At the same time, there are racist politicians that are doing TV spots. And at the same time, these politicians are all Freemasons, which is a part of Satanism with the hand signals. And you can see that the Pope is too busy doing photo ops instead of stopping the pedophilia that he has spoken of in that news article that says pedophilia in the Christian church is at over 2%. And that includes the bishops, the cardinals, the priests, and all of the Christian organizations in the world, and all the Christian schools with the teachers, and also all of the Christian charities and different organizations all throughout the world, no matter what denomination. So you can see that there is a lot of stuff going on which causes a lot of problems in society. And with all of the news pictures and news video articles that we've been showing, you can see that the leaders that people have elected to be in power are not doing anything about it. All that they seem to be doing is causing more problems by what they're partaking in. You can see that the presidential elective people are all using racist rhetoric to get elected in 2016 for the presidential election. You could see that the current president, he's doing Freemason hand signals, and he's also not doing anything legislatively to stop racism or to help the homeless or to help the sick further. And at the same time, you could see that there's a lot of health risks that come from materialism and also from different foods and different environmental pollutions in society. And you can see how it's affecting the teenagers, because if from when they are young, if they are not growing up healthy, you can see that it will lead to depression and other cardiovascular problems and so on. So these things are linked. Psychology and biology are linked, and this is why society is so chaotic, because it makes people feel sad and depressed, and then that depression leads to sickness and illness and so on. So this is why as well we showed the news video article about the superbug that is throughout the world and that has been found in North America. So you can see that the doctor was trying to give people real-time knowledge on the situation, and the reporter was trying to downplay it. So he was saying that the drugs and antibiotics that they use to fight off these superbugs are very toxic, and that they do not usually give it to people because it's toxic and it can hurt the human body. And at the same time, the reporter kept trying to call that antibiotic drug that they use, she tried calling it a wonderful drug. And the doctor had to stop her and say, no, it's not a wonderful drug because it's very toxic, and it's what harms humans because it's very toxic as well. So the problem is that with these superbugs, they only have these very toxic to human antibiotics or drugs that are being used to fight these superbugs. And now those superbugs are becoming resistant to the antibiotics and drugs that are toxic to humans. And those are the last line of defense. So this is very serious because they're trying to let people know that there are superbugs in society that can cause very strong illnesses where people can get very sick and die. And you can see that they're not talking about that a lot in society. They spoke about it once in the daytime news, and then that was it. When that's very important information that people could learn and could also help each other with. So you could see they're not telling people what's important. They're only brushing over it briefly, and then they don't speak about it again. And that is why I'm saying that society is causing all these problems by having people feel depressed psychologically, and then at the same time they have these superbugs running rampant in the world society, causing people to get sick. So all of this stuff is prophecy of the Almighty Father Yahuwah. For in the Bible and originally in the Torah, he spoke to the 12 tribes, dark-skinned melanin people of Israel, and he told them that with the Messiah and after the Messiah, Emmanuel, that there would be false leadership in the world, and that there would be false churches, and that there would be a whole heap of Satanism in the world. So this is what the world governments represent in the world today. And this is what Christianity and Judaism and Islam and Freemasonry and all of the paganism in the world represent today. It was prophesied in the Torah, and it was prophesied to the 12 tribes, Israel, melanin people, that there would be a transatlantic slave trade. That was prophesied in the book of Deuteronomy. And at the same time as well, in today's world, what we are living is prophecy of the Almighty Father, Yahuwah. So to stop these things from affecting you as much as you can, it's best to live as an Israelite and to pray to the Almighty Father for forgiveness and to ask for love and peace in your heart so that you can help people every day and to help your neighbors and to not support these governments of the world. Don't support any of these religions or paganism, because as you can see, people are getting what they deserve. Everybody is wasting time by going to work with the 9 to 5, and because everybody is buying in to the housing markets, and because everybody is buying into the pharmaceuticals and the medicine and to the entertainment with the movies and the TV, you can see that they're putting racist politicians on all of the comedy shows because they're making a joke of racism. And this is what people don't realize with all these movies. They're just putting racism in your face, and nobody is talking about the real issues. Nobody's solving it. So this is where it stems from, and this is what the problem is, and this is why people have to avoid all of those things. Don't buy into anything that's associated with Hollywood and the paganism and the Satanism, because all of it is racist pedophilia. And you could see it stems into the government as well. Police officers, people in the army, they're also doing child abuse, and this is what stems out into society. And that's why there's also child abuse inside the Christian church. So this is why children have depression, and like we said, it's leading to a whole bunch of biological problems in society as well. And then furthermore, as prophesied by Almighty Father Yahuwah in the Bible and Torah, the Almighty Yahuwah said that there would be many wars caused by these fake and false leaders. And that's why you can see in North Korea that they're talking about having hydrogen bombs and nuclear bombs. And then you can see the list of other countries that also have these weapons in their arsenal. So just like with that Hollywood movie that they did about North Korea, and it was a spoof, you can see that they already know what's going on there. They're not taking it seriously. And when civilians are dying in all these fake wars because of the ISIS wars that are a part of Freemasonry, because there are Islamic Freemasons and Christian Freemasons and Jewish Freemasons that are part of the synagogue of Satan that's prophesied in the book of Revelation. All of it is infighting, and that's the proof of it. So Almighty Father Yahweh, He will heal the world with peace, love, truth, miracles, holy word, and prophecy. Hallelujah, in the name of Yahweh.